So it's not just the people that we contacted by email, it's also people on Yelp and people on Google and Facebook for lending reviews, and they're all between 4.7 and 4.9 out of 5. So we know there's something special here, even in, as John said, a lousy rapid. Now, the one thing I'll point out is that when you look at results like this, the first thing that hit me was, well, everybody's so happy, why do we need to move? Well, look around the room. We have 100 people in this room, and all the planes have been pushed to the side. There's just not room. And I've been one of the few people that's been lucky enough to go over and look at the X-22. There's just so much more that could be on display here. And where the displays would have enough room to kind of breathe and let everybody take them in without having all the clutter that we have. But nevertheless, people really enjoy the experiences. Another thing we found, which was a little surprising, was benefits to the local economy. So 70% of the people who said they visited here actually spent money before or after coming here in other local businesses or entertainment venues. And this is a theme that you see a lot in museum research. We weren't so sure we were going to see it here because we're a little isolated here from a lot of the other opportunities to spend money. But people still went out and behaved like museum goers across the country and really made a day of it, or in a lot of cases an overnight stay. The one concern that we had coming out of this, though, was that the audience that we surveyed, just the nature of the people who have been so close to this museum, they're unique. So a lot of engineers, a lot of pilots, a lot of military, a lot of educators, people whose needs and interests we really need to respect, but we also know that for this to succeed, we need multiple more people in. So what we did, separate study, 350 people living in Erie and Niagara counties, just a representative sample of the population. And the first thing that jumped out is the way that regional pride and interest in history runs really deep in our community. So 70% of the survey respondents in Erie and Niagara counties consider themselves to be proud Western New Yorkers. 78% said they want to learn more about the region's aerospace and innovation and legacy. And this wasn't with us identifying up front that this was a survey particularly for an aerospace museum. These are just people answering off the top of their heads. But this really has answered a big concern of ours, which is that we know that there's this passionate interest in this small group of people who have been members and attending, but what about the broader community? And these numbers really jumped out at us. So 50% of the people connected to this organization, based on our survey, have some kind of family history with one of the aeronautic leaders in the community, either through themselves, through their family, or through ancestors. We found that number is 24% in Western New York. So that was shockingly high. But if you're going back generations, and I know in my wife's family, people who worked at Bell, you don't have to go too many degrees of separation to find people who have had that experience. So that was another very encouraging sign. Another thing is that we don't have to convince people that museums are good places to go. 54% of the people in our survey visit museums or historical attractions at least once a year, and most go more than once. And just like the Niagara Aerospace Museum attendees, they spend a lot of money before and after the visits. So again, we're getting that sign that there's an economic impact that goes beyond what happens in the museum experience. Some of the most popular attractions, it's really interesting to see. Science Museum, not so much of a surprise. Naval Park, not so much of a surprise. But if you're from Erie County like me, the aquarium is a superstar. And we've seen that, just from some of the numbers that Lindsay has been able to pull from them, was reinforced in the survey as one of the leading attractions in Western New York. So the idea of being in a district with them, where you can collaborate and people can make a day out of a couple museums, is a very, very powerful attraction. 70% of this survey, 70% of respondents visit Niagara Falls at least once annually. Most people who visit more than once. And then this was just the icing on the cake. So we gave the respondents a list of potential attractions, current attractions and new attractions for the museum. And then said, if we had some of these things, how interested would you be in attending? 83% said they'd be interested. So, everything was just extraordinarily positive in the response. And there's, we have to remember, this is only 1.2 million people. This represents 1.2 million people in the United Counties. There's 9.5 million people that come to visit the falls every year. And Niagara USA has some good information on them, so they've done some research into this. About 20% of the people who come to visit the falls also visit a museum, either during a day trip or an overnight stay. And 30% visit a historical attraction. I think we probably live in the middle of those categories. So again, there's just a lot of positive reinforcement for expansion and for where we're thinking of going. John mentioned economic impact. There's a proven and generally accepted tool called Implant, which does that kind of research where you get some inputs on your budget, your attendance, and for new construction, what construction budgets. This is very preliminary, very rough, but initially the first numbers we came up with was that the museum would contribute about $4 to $6 million a year in regional payrolls. And the construction, depending on how big the project is, we're thinking somewhere between $65 and $85 million going back into the county over 2 years. So, for people in government, that's a very important concern. So, just wrapping this up, everything we've learned so far tells us that people value the museum's collection, the story it tells, and that there's strong potential for the museum to do even more in a larger, more visible space. So in the coming months, we're going to start working together, John, his team, Lindsay, and I, on a marketing plan. It's going to be kind of two-pronged. One is that we want to build awareness and drive more traffic into this current museum. I think it's very natural when people are close to something that they love to see all the warts. And what we're hearing from this research is that people come through here, they see the collection, they don't see the warts so much. So we can market with confidence and hopefully pull more people in. And secondly, we have to start getting people engaged in our future plans. So that's where we stand. I'll turn it back over to John, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be around here.
Thank you, Jeff.